Good day there guys, welcome to our tutorial. In this video we're going to be looking at inputs. So if your Angular app is made of components, then inputs are how we make those components actually reusable. And in this video we're going to be covering the modern input API. So we'll look at some optional inputs, we'll look at required inputs, we'll look at transforms, and we have a little starting app that we are going to extend. Alright, so just in terms of what inputs are, so an input is data that flows from the parent component into the child component, right? And ideally the child should treat that data as read-only. And Angular now supports modern inputs using the input signal, and that means the value is reactive and it pairs naturally with computed signals as well. All right, so I do have a video on the input, and I do have a video on signals if you would like to give that a look as well. Otherwise, let's get into the demo. So at the moment we have this half working team dashboard. The idea is that the parent owns the data, so i.e. the list of members, and we have a reusable child component, which are these cards, which would basically be rendering each of those members that are sent through. The parent will pass through inputs like the name, the role, and the status. And just to show you what that looks like from a code perspective, we have our team component, we have our list of members, we have our for loop going through each member, and we are using our reusable card component. In terms of our card component, we don't have anything of a year yet. However, we do have a base for how the card should look, and that's what we're going to be filling in. So let's get started with that. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I actually just want to add in the inputs that we will be using. So for this card to look correctly, we do need to have a name. So the idea is that we will put the name as the title, we'll put the role as the subtitle, and our chip will be the status. Additionally, we will then have a computed signal which will use the name, and then also bind to it will also be a computed signal which will use the name input signal, and then just concatenate that with the URL over here to produce us with a avatar. All right, so let's start with the name. So in terms of syntax, it will be name, and then for name, I do want the name to be required. So I do not want this component to be able to be rendered without a name. So therefore, I'm going to make name a required signal. All right. So the same goes for role. I also do not want this component to be rendered without a role. However, for the status, I will not be doing that. So I'll just do input, and then I will do status. And in this case, this would make it an optional input. However, I do want to have a default, so I'm going to do offline as the default. All right. So now we have this set up, right? The next thing that we actually need to do is we need to actually just use these inside of our markup over here. And remember, because they are input signals, we will have to call them as if we are. Or when we use them, we'll have to call them as if we're using a function, right? So in terms of that kind of notation, so if we are going to use the name, we'd have to have name over here. If we are going to use the role, we'll use role with our brackets. All right, let's go ahead and save that. And then for status, we're going to do the same thing. So I don't know if you noticed, but we did get some red pop up here, and you probably guessed why, right? So because we made the name and the role required, if you look at our error, we can see that the input name is required, but no value is available yet. And that's because we don't even want this component to render without the name. All right. So once we go back to the team, you can see that we have our error required inputs must be specified. So let's go ahead and do name, and you'll notice that status was not one of those. All right, so we'll do member dot name, we'll do role, member dot role, and then we'll do status, which will be member dot status. All right, so let's go ahead and save that. We should already be having a half decent UI. So we have our names displaying and we have our roles displaying as well. And next to that, we have our chip, which shows our status. All right. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create a computed signal. And like I said, this plays nicely with computed signals because it is a signal itself. So what I want to do is I want to create a computed signal called avatar src. I'm making it computed. And what I want to do is I actually want to take this URL. Let's go ahead and paste that. Okay, and then I actually want to use the name. So name over there, and just because this is going into a URL, let's just add that piece as well. All right, so you can see this computed signal makes use of name, which is the input signal at the top, and we are going to add in avatar src over here. So we're just doing some thing like that. So again, it is still a signal. So now if we look at our UI, we can see our little avatars displaying there as well. All right, so just to recap, so the input.required gives you required input, and if the parent forgets to bind to it, then Angular will complain about that. The input with or without a default value, but basically it gives you an optional input with a safe fallback. And then as inputs are signals, computed values will update automatically when the parent updates the input. All right, so next thing I want to show you is something. So in terms of the signals, we also do have the option of giving a transform. So Angular does have some default transform, and it's basically taking data from one form to another. In our case, we're going to do something really simple. So we are going to do a trim. So we'll just have let's just add a type for that. So the transform will still return a string. It will take in a string and return a string, right? So in terms of that, this is how it looks. So we'll have a transform over there. Let's just call it value, which is a string, and the output will be value.trim, right? Really simple in terms of this, but again, this can let you transform it as you want to, but basically it will allow you to take in some, like, let's say, messy data and then just normalize it inside the component, right? So now the component always receives like clean values regardless of what the parent passes. All right, the next thing I want to show you is aliases. So basically this is just for the public API. So remember, in terms of seeing input you can kind of see as your public API of your component, right? So in terms of, let's say we have a role property, and let's say I wanted the parent to actually bind to something called member role, but inside the member card, let's say we feel it's not easy to call it member role, right? So let's say we want to do an alias, so it'd be alias, and then let's just say member role. So now what that means is that there is no role to bind to on the team side. You can see this complains, and in terms of the name of it, it's now called member role. All right, so basically gives it an alias. However, inside of here you can see we still refer to it as role. All right, so just a few quick notes. Input should be used as a property initializer. Input names are case sensitive as well. So let's say for status, capital S status is not the same as the lowercase status, and then inputs are also read only in the child. So if you do need to do like edits and things, rather derive the state in the child instead of like mutating the input, you know. So that's pretty much it for in terms of the modern Angular inputs API. So in terms of a recap, like I said, you define inputs either with just input or input.required. You read with the name, and then as if you're calling a function. You can also derive UI with computed. You can normalize with transforms, and you can clean up the public API with aliases. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please give it a like and subscribe. Thank you.